Hi, and welcome to NDE Talk. I'm your host, Natalie Higgins. Today's guest is David Ditchfield, a beautiful musician and incredible artist, but he's also very well known amongst the near-death experiences community. And today, David will be sharing with us his near-death experience. Now, I've been waiting a few weeks to have David come on the podcast today, and so I'm very thankful and humbled to be able to have him with us today. So without further ado, I welcome you all, David Ditchfield.
Thanks for having me along, Natalie. It's been great to join you. My name's David, and I guess I should start with my story, really, which I had a near-death experience following a freak accident. I was seeing a friend off in Cambridge in the UK at a rail station, and my coat got trapped in the automatic closing doors as I was saying goodbye to my friend. I was giving her a kiss and a hug, and there it was jammed in. And I tried everything, of course, to try and release it, even tried to take it off, but there just wasn't time. The engines were already starting to rev up. And I kind of figured at this point, I was looking into the eyes of my friend through the glass, and I could see the horror in her eyes. I thought, oh my goodness, I thought this is it. I'm going to die. I didn't think I was going to survive. So the train started to pull out the station, and it went out at great speed. You don't realize how fast these trains pull out, until you're actually attached to the outside.
Yeah.
And exactly. And you feel every gear shift, because normally when you get on a train, let's face it, we all just sit down and open our phones and start texting or whatever. We don't think about it, but they go very fast, believe me. And so I lost my footing eventually, and I was dragged along the platform. Then I was sucked between the platform edge and the speeding train, and went under the wheels. I was thrown around very violently, as you can probably imagine, and it was incredibly painful and incredibly terrifying.
Yeah.
And it was a strange thing, because it was like time had slowed down in a sense. It wasn't like slow motion, but it felt like I got time to think what I was going to do, because I was in fight or flight mode, as when you're faced with something like this, you go into. And I decided to fight, and I decided that this train suddenly became like a huge beast, and it wasn't going to take me, it wasn't going to kill me. And I ended up being thrown in between the tracks, as the train was still continuing on, and I put my face right down into the gravel and hoped for the best, that nothing would hit me over the back of the head. And thankfully it didn't. Then it moved off down the track. And I just remember looking up and seeing this beautiful blue sky. It was a February day, but it's very cold, and it was pure blue sky. And I just felt so in touch with nature at that point, because I was just so relieved that I was still alive. I was in total agony. My left arm had been cut from the elbow down, and there was a lot of blood loss. But the ambulance guys arrived really quick. There was a small hospital just around the corner. They jumped on the track, started cutting through my clothes. They got me in an ambulance, and the doctor said, look, there's a hospital nearby, but the one that's going to save your life is a 25-minute drive. Can you hang in there? And I said, yeah, let's go. So we did do, and we screamed off down the highway, and we arrived in the hospital, and there was a whole team of medics waiting there, and they all got to work on me. And I was getting pretty scared, because I could hear fear in their voices. I couldn't understand what they were talking about, because it was all science, of course, And then my family arrived, and they were suddenly there, and I thought, where did they come from? How did they find out, But there they were. And of course, everything seemed pretty bizarre anyhow. And they were in tears. Well, my mum was in tears anyway. She was holding my hand, and I was apologizing, said, Mom, I'm so sorry. It was me bringing all the dramas to this family. She was going, no, it's not your fault. Stop it, which of course it wasn't my fault. But yeah, so it was at that point that I left my body. I left, the drama of the hospital and the sheer agony that I was in. And I was suddenly transported into another place, another realm, very darkened place, but not a foreboding darkness. It was a very calm sort of darkness. And I instantly felt relaxed and calm. And I felt instantly as well that I died. I thought, because I knew that it wasn't looking that good, so I figured I must be dead, and this is the next stage.
Wow.
But yeah, and I didn't resist it. I know I've since learned, because I've met other people, since I've had my NDE, that have been through the similar things. And some people do try to fight it. They've got kids and stuff, and too much to lose. And they really want to come back. I didn't want to die, but after all that I'd been through, the horror of it all, it just kind of felt of like a beautiful relief to be where I was. So I went with it, really. And I sort of looked around to try and get my bearings, and as I looked around, I was kind of greeted by these beautiful orbs of color that were slowly pulsating all around me. They were like landing lights to an airport, but they were like sort of orbs, and that made me feel calm. I tried to get my bearings to find out, where I was, and I realized I was no longer laid out on the hospital trolley that I'd been on for some time. I was now on a huge rock. It was like a huge sort of granite rock, but with a kind of like a smooth slate finish. And it felt very comfortable to be lay on, which was unusual, because you wouldn't normally feel that
Yeah, I was gonna
comfortable.
say it doesn't sound very comfortable.
Exactly, so there was a lot of things. Everything just kind of fitted in this realm, so it didn't there was nothing at all that didn't feel right. And I decided to check on my body, because obviously I'd seen what a mess it had been in, and I just looked down, and everything was fixed. I wasn't wearing any
Wow.
clothes anymore, but I was just covered in like a beautiful satin sort of sheet that was just covering my body. But my arm was intact. Everything was, not even a single scratch or bruise, and I felt no pain. All the pain had dispersed. So that was kind of great to know that everything was back in place.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I laid my head back and closed my eyes. And then as time went on, I suddenly saw through my eyelids, there was light coming in. So I opened my eyes and I looked up, and there were like three symmetrical grids of white light coming in towards me. And I couldn't take my gaze away from this light. It was like a very bright, pure white light. And normally, the human eye wouldn't be able to take that kind of brightness, but in this realm, I could. In fact, I couldn't stop looking, because there was like a healing sort of energy coming from this light. And I felt that this healing energy was like healing all the trauma that my body had just been through in this horrific accident. And so that was great. It was just like a sensation of starting to come together again. And so I kind of laid back and closed my eyes again, and bathed in this light. And as time went on, I suddenly felt the presence of somebody had arrived. I felt there's somebody there. If you're kind of having a siesta in the afternoon and you close your eyes and somebody walks in the room, straight away there's someone there. It was like that. So I kind of opened my eyes and lifted my head, and there was this beautiful person, neither male nor female, just stood at my feet like an androgynous being of light, with this very pure white blonde hair, and wearing a simple black contemporary t-shirt, nothing too sort of heavenly or ethereal, as you'd probably imagine. It was just something like you or I would be wearing now. And but the skin that was glowing light from within, there was just this amazing sort of beautiful skin. And the light and energy that was coming from this person was was again very reassuring. And I felt that I knew this person. I looked into the face of this person, and I actually said out loud, I said, "Who are you? I know you, don't I? I know you from somewhere, and I can't figure where from." And this person didn't actually say anything back, but just smiled at me with a knowing smile. And but I was starting to get messages through, and I was being told that this person was the guardian to my soul. It was the keeper to my soul, if you like. So that was a great moment of feeling totally safe, that I was in a good place, and whatever was going to happen next was going to be great, because it all felt great. So I laid back again and decided just to keep relaxing and going with this. And I felt the presence of more people had arrived at the scene, if you like. And so I looked, and either side of me there were two female forms. There was a girl to my right with long brown hair, again in a very simple dress. She was kind of like sort of quite European looking, I guess. And whereas the girl to my left was more sort of Brazilian or American Indian or Asian Indian in appearance, and she had like this really beautiful traditional sort of dress on, and they both had their hands sort of slowly hovering over my body, over all the contours of my body, just very slowly, almost like Reiki healing, I guess, is the nearest I could
Yeah.
equate it to. Yeah, and the energy that was coming from their hands was very powerful. It was like this, it was like a hum of energy that was just kind of causing every molecule in my body to slowly vibrate with this energy of love. I could sense that it was like unconditional love that was coming from all three of these beings, and but now it felt like they'd gone beyond just healing my physical wounds. I felt like they were healing all the emotional wounds that I carried throughout my life, that we all do. We call it baggage, don't we? We always say, oh, that person's carrying a lot of baggage,
Yeah, stay away from that
and
person.
well, that was me, because I was carrying a lot of baggage, because my life before was not going great at all, so it was kind of
Mhm.
like, it was I needed all that to be taken off me. I needed all those layers to be slowly taken away, and they were getting down to the pure essence of my soul.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
it was, yeah, it was like, I'd never felt that in my life, and it was just so liberating to actually to reach that point, to get to the point where I felt that for the first time in my life, it was just me, and I was at peace with me, and I was quite happy with
Yeah.
me, rather than trying to fight it. And so yeah, so that was incredibly liberating. And then I started to think about my family, because, as I said earlier, my mother was really upset and in tears, and the whole family were distraught, obviously, from what had just happened. And I figured, for them, I would have been dead, and that would have been very hard for them to deal with. So I tried to edge my way over this big rock that I was laying on, and tried to see if I could see them. Um, and I looked down, hoping to see them, but I couldn't see them at all. But what I did see was this real awesome sight. It was like a huge waterfall of stars. It was the size of, say, Victoria Falls or Niagara Falls. It was, but instead of like millions of tons of water sort of bellowing over the edge, it was just billions of stars that were sparkling, that were just cascading over. And I just thought, wow, I'm in the universe. I'm not in a small darkened space that I originally thought I was. And that was a great feeling, to know that I was part of that universe, and it just felt great. And I just looked down, and there were shooting stars kind of falling through the middle. And the more that my eyes focused, the deeper I could see into this vast sort of abyss. I was looking down into infinity, and I was seeing like nebulas and colors starting to form. Um, so that was incredibly awe-inspiring, and it was then I pulled myself back over, and time went on, and I started to think about, where I was going next. And it was at that point, the most profound moment of the whole experience was to happen, was I felt it before I actually saw it. Again, my eyes were closed, and I felt that this vibration of love was starting to intensify. And I thought, what is going on? And I looked, and just beyond the being of light that I'd first seen, stood at my feet, was this huge tunnel of white light that was coming towards me through the universe and through the stars. And it was like surrounded by these very powerful flames. So it was quite immense in size. And normally something like this would be quite terrifying to look at, to be honest with you. But again, in this realm, everything felt safe and comfortable. So I just went with it. And I realized that what I was looking here was the source of all creation. I was being told that this is,
Wow.
that, yeah, this is where it all comes from. This is not the image of God that I'd always seen in textbooks and stuff, the
Yeah,
guy
the
with the long
white
beard
beard
and
and the
stuff.
chair and
Yes, indeed, yeah,
yeah.
holding his hand out to Adam. That wasn't it, And I know that in all sorts of faiths, whether it's Christianity or whatever, God or the creator normally comes in some kind of human form. But no, this was it, this huge tunnel of white light, and the energy coming from that white light was so intense that it was like overwhelming me with joy. And it was at that moment of feeling all that joy and affirmation that I just kind of came rushing straight back into my body, and I was back into the hospital. All the pain came rushing through, and suddenly the bright light that I was looking in was now fluorescent strip, and the noise was just kind of too much to bear. So yeah, there I
That's
was.
incredible. Can I
Yeah,
ask, do you know the duration of time that did you physically die on the operating table, or was it almost like an out of body experience?
yeah, I didn't physically die. As I say, I came very close to it. And this is what some people do when they have near-death experiences. Some people do clinically die, but not
Yeah.
all people do. It literally is what it says. That it's near. You're at a stage where you're facing death. You could be, you're on the cusp of it, as it were, and that's where
Yeah.
I was at. So they were concerned that the surgeons afterwards were really amazed that I pulled through. And not only that, they were amazed at the speed of my recovery. And I
Yeah.
knew that was a lot was to do with because even when I came crashing back into my body, a lot of people say you must have been really disappointed and gutted, but I wasn't, because I was just so filled with the excitement and the love that I just experienced that it stayed with me. And throughout the time in hospital of recovery, I felt like I'd got a cord still attached to that realm, and I felt the energy of those guardian angels that were with me were still there throughout the whole of the recovery period. And in terms of time, yeah, that's interesting, because it's time didn't exist in this realm, so it's very hard to sort of say how long it felt or how long it was.
Mm,
And that was the most interesting thing about it. That's one of the biggest things I brought back with me, because before that, I was always time was kind of overwhelmed my life, if you like, because I was in such a bad place. I was
yeah.
constantly thinking about the past and all the mistakes I'd missed or opportunities I'd missed, and then or concerned about the future, where it was all going to go. I was broke. I was running out of money. I was about to lose my apartment. And but in this realm, I didn't care about the past or the future, and it was just the present moment was all that mattered. So there was no sense of time. So it really was quite, infinite, which was great. Yeah.
Were you able to integrate the fact that there was almost timelessness and the way you were in that realm? Are you able to integrate that into where you are now on the earth plane? Do you take a minute to just breathe? Like, how do you integrate that? How is your life now since the experience?
Yeah, well, it's changed radically. I most certainly, I mean, you don't come back superhuman, of course. You come back and you've got the human emotions and everything that take place sometimes. But whenever if fear overwhelms me, or especially at the moment, we're all facing, the world's going through a lot of turmoil, and we're all apprehensive about the future and stuff like that. But whenever those moments hit me where I kind of do start to get concerned about what's happening in the world, I try and go back and say, look, remember that place you were in. Remember that there was no concerns about the future. The big lesson is that the future doesn't actually exist, which sounds a really crazy thing to say, but it doesn't. It hasn't happened yet. The only thing that's happening is the here and now, and the future is actually a story at this stage. And whether we create an optimistic story and say, yeah, the future is going to be great, I'm going to be moving into a new house, it's all going to be brilliant, and all those kind of things, or we cook up a story that's going to be frightening. We say, "Oh my goodness, it's just going to be terrible. My life's going to be. I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose everything."
Mm.
And we don't know. It's a story that we're creating. So yeah. So I take that with me now. I just kind of think, well, even when things are tough, if I'm watching the news and it's all looking pretty desperate, I
Yeah.
stop and look around me and say, look, I'm sat in my apartment, I'm alive, I'm not, I'm not been affected yet, or whatever, I'm not, I'm okay in the present here and now. So yeah, so I do bring that back with me.
And your poor girlfriend at the time when you were dragged onto the train, how is she in all of this?
Well, it's kind of interesting, really, because she actually thought that I'd died, because she ran through the carriage and she saw me go under, and
Yeah,
she said that the train finally, she couldn't stop the train,
that
and
must have
she
been
and
very
it,
traumatizing experience.
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, there's a lot of rules changed since my accident. There's actually 6 rules were changed in the UK after because they did a massive inquiry into it, and one of those rules was that there were so many levers above the doors, and there was all big signs saying, "Do not pull this lever, do not push that one." And of course, if you're in shock, you kind of go, "Oh, which one do I pull?" and stuff.
Yeah.
And she couldn't reach them either; they were quite high up. Not everyone can get to that kind of height and stuff. So she ran through the train and managed to grab the guard, and that he stopped the train. And she said that they stopped in the middle of the countryside. And believing that I was dead, she actually turned around to everyone in the carriage and said, "Look, my friend's just gone under the train, and he's dead. So can we say a prayer for him?" And she said, a woman
Wow.
stepped forward and said, "I'm a Christian. Would you like me to take the prayers?" And she said, "Yeah, please." And she said everyone just put down their laptops and their phones and newspapers, and because they're all commuters, and everyone prayed. And it was a very moving moment, but I felt those prayers as well. I really believe in the power of prayer now, that they really do work. The prayers really do actually get to you. And I felt those prayers. And when I was recovering in hospital, my parents were saying that a lot of people in the community, in the different churches, were praying for me because it was kind of big on the news, when it happened. So everyone knew about it. So that I felt those prayers. So they really do work. But yeah, so it's a huge thing for her to go through. And when she got to the other station and she got off, everyone was on the platform. Then they announced over the tannoy system saying there are delays because there's been a fatality at the previous station.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they got it wrong, obviously. So that was
Yeah.
so she believed that. So when she saw me in hospital, I remember all of us, when I saw my family, I just said, "Look, I need to speak to Anna." I could see her there, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she was just shaking her head, going, "I thought you were dead. I can't believe you're alive. This is
Oh.
incredible." So yeah, so it was an awful thing for her to have to experience, for anyone to experience. Yeah.
Did, did you have any abilities or any gifts since your experience that you brought back here?
Yeah, that's interesting because when I was in hospital, I went into theatre straight away, and I was under for about 8.5 hours, and then they given me my own room, which is great. But I remember it was about 2 a.m. When I came round, and I was laid there in that bed. Sorry, not left, sat there, and I was obviously thinking about the horror of the accidents, but I was also thinking about this incredible experience, this whole spiritual journey I've been on. I thought, and I knew nothing about near-death experiences at this point. I was totally non-spiritual, and so I thought, how am I going to tell everybody about this? And I wanted to as well. I wasn't afraid to share the story, and I thought, I was afraid I was going to forget everything, which of course I never have done. So what I did was I thought, I'm going to do a painting. I'm going to do a huge painting. I'd never done anything like this before, but I wanted to do a huge canvas like the big ones you see that the Renaissance painters do, all those biblical scenes, from in Italy. And I thought they've got to be like that. So I did start painting once I was out of hospital and once I was well enough. And that was coming together. I was apprehensive at first, of course, because I didn't want to mess this up. But once I started painting, I realized I was being helped. I realized that I was channeling kind of ideas for it. It's like getting a crash course on how to put color onto a canvas, how to bring skin tones alive with different blues and greens and all sorts, which I would
Yeah.
never have thought of, which is amazing. So I never stopped. I kept going. And there was a lot of synchronicity started to come into my life as well after the the accident in the NDE, and people were coming along. Like there was some friends of my sister's just happened to visit because I was recovering at my sister's house when I came out of hospital, and they came in. They said, "Look, we've got a health center. We do yoga and Pilates, and we've got a studio space going if you want to start your painting." I said, "That'd be great." And they said it's only for a week, and I thought, okay. And of course I didn't finish within a week, but they said, "No, you can stay and we'll move you around the studios, and there's one up in the attic." So I was called the artist in the attic, and people
Oh,
used to come in.
amazing.
Yeah, I know, it was great. And I'm still really good friends with them, of course, but I ended up staying there for 2 years, rent free. They didn't charge me anything. And
Wow.
then I was keen to discover a bit more about what had happened, and speak to people who might know more about it. So I knew there was a spiritualist church in the town where I was recovering. So once I was well enough, I used to start going for walks to the river with my sister, and we found this church. I said, "I know it's a doorway somewhere, and I've got to go in and talk to these people." And I did. I went in through this doorway and ended up in this beautiful little spiritualist church, and I was in a pretty bad way at the time. I got all sorts of stuff holding me together,
Yeah.
and so they said at the end of the session we were having coffee, and somebody said to me, "Look, we do spiritual healing here. Would you like some healing?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds great. I've never heard of it, but I'd love to." So I started having spiritual healing, which helped me physically to recover, but also emotionally. Um, but in those sessions, some of the healers were clairvoyant, and they give like little messages at the end, saying, "Oh, I saw a blue light coming through, your heart chakra and things like that." But then they started saying, "Why am I seeing a violin placed across your chest?" I was going, "I have no idea." Then one of them said, "They're telling me that you're going to write a piece of music about your experience." I went, "Okay." So I went back and all I got was this little cheap old synthesizer up in the loft, and I got that down, and I started to try and put something together because I could play guitar, but very basically, just like three chords thrashing out punk songs or whatever, but that was all. But I started developing what I thought was going to be a song, but it became something I thought this could be performed by an orchestra. And in the same way as I was ambitious about the paintings, I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this so that an orchestra can play it. And one of the people who used to come in and see me while I was painting played cello in the local orchestra, and we used to go for coffees. And she said, "Oh, what are you up to?" And I told her about this piece of music, and she said, "Oh, maybe our orchestra could perform it." And I thought, well, yeah, that would be great. So I got it together, and my brother said, "Look, I've got some software that you're going to need because an orchestra will need to be able to read the manuscript. You can't just give them cassettes and stuff."
Mm.
So that's what I did, and he said, he was great. He helped me out. He bought me a new keyboard, and then so I just played all these different parts that I'd been putting together on the synthesizer, and then they became manuscripts, and I took it to the orchestra, and they said, "Yeah, we'll do it." So that was amazing because I remember the very first rehearsal, turning up for that, and I was really quite nervous about it because I didn't know how it was going to sound, whether it was going to work. All I got was everything that was up here in my mind, and that I've been using in these very cheap sort of organ sounds or whatever, on the synthesizer. But when the conductor's baton came down, it was like, wow, it was just like it was like three-dimensional sound of what I'd just been doing on this little synth. And it was just incredible. And I thought it's worked. I thought I pulled it off. I can't believe it. But
Incredible.
I know it's mad, isn't it? But you know what? It's the same thing. I was being helped. I was being given help. By then, I knew about channeling. I knew that when ideas were coming together, I thought, wow, that's it. That's it. This is not me that's creating this. This is coming from this other source. And I would sit back and go, "Thank you so much." So yeah.
Have you ever orchestrated anything before, or have you ever done art prior to this as well, or it's just completely channeled?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed I loved drawing at school, and I knew I got an aptitude for it. So it's not like it had come from nowhere. But the truth is that I'd I would I wanted to take that further, but I was discouraged because I'm dyslexic. So I'd failed all my academics, and they said there's no way you can do anything like that. There's two local factories, and those are your options basically.
Mm,
And so I was discouraged. So I never took that forward at all. And in terms of music, like I said, I could just thrash out three chords on a guitar, which is amazing. That's the most remarkable thing. I mean, even the conductor of the orchestra said, I said, "Oh, you must have composed music yourself," And he said, "No way." He said, "You don't realize what a big task you've taken on, but writing a piece of music is incredible, and especially without any training. In fact, when just before after the first rehearsal, they turned around to me and said, "Look, would you mind saying a few words to the local press about your piece? Because that's what we normally do if we have a composer." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I spoke to the local press, the Cambridge Evening News, and they said, "Hang on a sec, you're the guy who went under the train, aren't you?" Because it was all over the news at the time. And yeah, that's me. And they said, "This is going on the front cover." And after that, the phone kept ringing, and then the BBC said, "We want to come and interview you and come to your
yeah.
rehearsal." So they came to the rehearsal, and after that, all the tickets sold out, obviously because it was great exposure. And the conductor actually turned around. He was interviewed, and actually not the conductor, the guy who was singing, because I got this beautiful tenor singer to sing on the third movement because I wanted somebody with some vocals and some lyrics in there. And he's brilliant, and he was interviewed, and he's like very highly educated, and he turned around and said, "Well, what David's done here is amazing. He stepped out of his comfort zone and he's created something remarkable." And I thought, wow. And I never even thought about it like that, because to me, there was no sense of me. It wasn't all about me. It was more about I was being helped to bring something together to be able to spread the news to as many people as possible. So the concert sold out, and that was great because, like I say, there was no ego involved. It was more like, brilliant. There's going to be more people here, and it was packed from wall to wall. We broke all the fire regulations. We were overfilled with people, but it didn't matter because the atmosphere was just so beautiful, and there was a standing ovation, and it was just remarkable because my mother was sat next to me, and when they finished, she was in tears, but this time there were tears of joy, and she was like hugging me, and it was just so, she said that was just so beautiful. So yeah, so from then on I got commissioned to write other pieces. So that's really where I'm at now. So I've just been writing music and creating art, and that's my life is a lot more three-dimensional now because it wasn't working before, but I found that, and it's something we can all do. We don't. It doesn't take a near-death experience or an accident like I had to bring all this together. It's this we can all try to channel through. We've all got our guides, basically. Those guides are there to help us. We just don't realize it. I never realized it. I went through my whole life not even realizing that I got these angels that were there who wanted to help me.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you, do you believe that you're afraid of death any longer?
No, I'm not. No, I don't. I don't fear death at all, um, because I realize that now that that the soul is too strong an entity to just suddenly stop. Yes, the body stops and cuts off and dies, but the soul goes on, and that's what I experienced. That I experienced the next stage that we go on to. I mean, I've lost a few people in my life since this has happened, and it's helped me come to terms with that. Obviously, I've grieved for them, for my loss for them, but at the same time, it's helped me to know that where they're going is the next stage of the journey. It's not the end. It's not this bleakness, and it's also made me realize that we don't talk about death enough. I don't say that we have to be talking
Mm,
about it all the time over our morning coffee, but we practice for everything else in life, don't we? We practice for marriage, birth, even taking our driving test or whatever. We
yeah.
rehearse for it, but we don't rehearse for this. It is going to happen to us all at one point. So, but no, I don't fear it anymore. So it's something that I try to get across to as many people as hopefully as possible, that that death is not something that we need to fear.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Would you be able to tell the viewers where we could find your art and your music pieces?
Yeah, sure. If you go to my website, which is called Shine On the Story, which is Shine On is the title of my book, so that's why it's got that at the moment. So yeah, shineonthestory.com. And if you go there, and you'll be able to you can stream the first symphony that I talked about for free on there, and then you can look at some of my artwork. And if you want to follow me on social media, please do, because then you can there's going to be new art and music coming out next year that I'd like people to be able to see what's happening. So please do. And there's links on my website, so you can see where all those are, like Instagram and YouTube and what have you. But yeah,
Beautiful.
and yeah, if people do want to read the book, then you can get it on Amazon. It's available pretty much everywhere in the world, really. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I might have to purchase that for myself, David.
Oh, great. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we leave, would you be able to leave the viewers with a positive message from your experience or something that we could take away from what you've experienced in order to help us with our daily lives?
Um. Well, I
Not to put you
just
on the spot.
no. Okay. No, I'm thinking because there's so many different things that and I'm just trying to think that and things come through to me in the same way as when I talked about channeling. So what I've just been told now is that going back to my NDE, and I talked about when I saw the waterfall of stars and feeling like I was in the universe. It made me realize that we are all part of that universe. That we don't think about it. We look up at the sky and we look at the stars from time to time, but basically we're on this planet, and Earth itself is a heavenly, beautiful place. It really is. We're so lucky to be here. But the universe is we're just part of that universe, and the universe is constantly moving forward. Felt that sensation of forwardness, and the universe wants us to keep moving forward with it, and it wants us to keep recreating. It doesn't want all the negative oppression and power struggle and
Yeah.
oppression that is there at the moment, and the pendulum will swing away from that, because the universe will want to push through all the positive energy of love as well, because it's all love that's out there. And the love is the most powerful source there is. Let's face it. We all know that, don't we? We know that love is the greatest thing that can happen in our lives, and it's there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for coming onto my podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. And yeah, you take care. Thank you so much.
And you too. Thanks for having me along. Yeah.